Hello, Tom LeBecchia here with the first ever dedicated edition of the Four Horsemen. I'm your co-host, Tom LeBecchia, with my esteemed co-host, JSV Capital. How you doing today?
Very good, Tom. Hello, everyone.
Why don't you give a quick introduction of who you are for those people that are watching this for the first time?
Jason with JSV Capital out of Jersey, part of the Four Horsemen. Welcome.
There you go. Joe, a.k.a. Bay 8th. What say you, sir?
Sorry, I had to wet my whistle. My name is Joe, and I'm the fourth horseman. Not the youngest horseman, but I look the youngest, and I'm the better looking of the group. And just want to say, I'm blessed to be here with these guys.
And around out, Brooklyn guy, Vinny Bracco. Vinny has over 1,000 subs. We were waiting to start this channel until he got over the hump, but he humped it out. Humpity hump. Vinny Bracco, what say you?
I'm Vinny Bracco from Brooklyn originally. I'm a Brooklyn guy and part of the Four Horsemen. Proud to be.
All right. And welcome. I'm really happy to start the Four Misfits. Horsemen.
Yeah.
And we're going to start it off. So, there's a lot going on in the whole MobTube thing, but I want to, before I get to that, we're all, obviously men. We're Italian American. Let's just kind of go, what should men be like these days versus maybe even the past, right? We all grew up. I did not have a father growing up. I'd be the first to admit it. I know some of you have, some of you haven't. Maybe a good representation of a man. Maybe you didn't. But I want to know, what should Italian American father, husband be like today? JSU Capital, a.k.a. Mohawk, you're up.
Well, first of all, they should be around. They should, as far as having children, as far as having a significant other, be there for them. Honesty. Obviously, we all have our own white lies, but honesty. They should always pick up the tab, right? Men should always pay for the women, the children, chivalry, hold the doors, have manners, try and watch their mouths. I believe that we lost that touch where, men take care of their families or take care of their women or take care of their children. Like, men are supposed to look out for those, right? And I think the whole equal. Yes, we're all equal in humanity, but in the social world, right? We're not equal in the social world. Men should be a little bit higher and pick up the tab, hold the door, right? Be a gentleman, right?
Let me ask you this, because we only have a half
lost
hour.
that.
We only have a half hour, and I think you're trying to take up 27 minutes of it. So, Jason, you have two boys, right? And we won't say what's happening next. I'll have you do it in a minute. Would you, if you had a daughter, would you allow your daughter to date a guy like you?
No, absolutely not.
Joe, you're up. What should a man be today? If anything differs from Jason.
Well, one thing I find, like, with Italian men, or father figures,
Yeah.
One thing I would do different, let's say, if I had children, was I would open up the children's mind to other cultures and other foods and stuff like that, and just make them more well-rounded, because myself, it's I only eat Italian food basically, but there's a lot of other, I don't have ambitions to go to Italy and see Europe and you guys do, you know what I mean? I'm just happy, being here, but you wind up pigeonholing yourself, and I wish that, that I went to college and did that a little more. So I definitely think we need schooling, and we need to just broaden what the norm is for us.
Broaden the horizons. Vinny?
Yeah.
I think that if we're Italian, if we're coming from an old world dad, obviously I wouldn't be having a child now at 60, but then again, nowadays they do. That it's not the old world anymore. It's a new world. And you have to be a little more hands-on. You can't, no crack in the ass, rough it up, dust the dirt off your legs. You have to really be a little more proactive with guys now. Girls too, but I think the old world was always proactive with the girls. Watch them, the teenagers. I think the guys pretty much had to live that strict code and all that. Not that you shouldn't be stand up, but I think the world has changed. I think the father has to be a little more hands on with the son. Not you're a man. You have to talk to the kid if he's having problems. Not like suck it up like I did. And I think you have to be a little more respectful of their feelings, because even Italian kids back in the day had feelings. I think the fathers felt like you're a man. You don't show anything. And I think you have to be. This is a new world now, and I think guys like me, it's hard to accept, but it is, and you have to act according, like Joe said.
And Vinny, you don't have a daughter, correct? You have a son, correct?
No, son, okay. 26. So I don't have that problem right now.
If you have a niece that you love,
I have a few of them.
Would you let your niece date a guy like you?
I wouldn't let her look at me. Walking down the street, I'd say, "Look at that bird over there."
So hold on. So Joe, same question to you. You have a daughter. Would you allow your daughter to date a guy like you?
I would allow. Well, there's two things I want to say.
Don't hedge.
Well, come on, just say yes or no. Everybody say yes or no. Because
here's the thing. Okay, are we talking about 19-year-old Joe, or are we talking about 32-year-old Joe? Because they're two different men.
You ain't either one. You ain't either one. What are you talking about, you old motherfucker?
Joe showed up at Parks Casino on a walker.
Joe, the 70-year-old Joe.
No, let me. Tom, you got me good, man. You got me good with this whole dress code thing. Yeah, dress like this, dress like that, and then he makes fun of me.
What?
Yeah, wait. He makes fun of me. He's got me dressing like a bozo when he's making fun.
I like how Joe dresses on the pod.
Now, one of the guys in the comments said, "Tom, that was a real good joke you got by saying, he was dressed nice." And I wanted to tell the guy, he's being serious, but if you think he's, joking,
no, because like you get away, like I couldn't get away with that. You grew up in Brooklyn, you have the accent, you're in Staten Island, you can get away with like the leopard skin Nikes, right? I can't. If I wore that, that's weird. It's like having a mohawk past 28 years old.
Tom gets away with dressing like Bill Belichick. That's what Tom gets away with.
Exactly. But you know what? When I first came to your house, Tom, I had a few gold chains on, and you're like, I would never wear that stuff, but it looks good on you. It's like, what? It's like you hit me with that one. I don't know what that means.
I'm envious because I couldn't pull it off.
Right.
Joe has me so paranoid about looking old, being 60. I went out and spent $300 on sweatsuits.
I know. Let me tell you, I feel bad too because I made a bad comment. You're
gonna feel bad when the super chats start, and I take some of it.
We had a certain guy that we were arguing with, and I said, that guy's harmless. He couldn't hurt a fly. He's 60 years old. I told that to my mom. She's like, "How old is Vinny?" I said, "Oops, I might have offended him too."
No, you never offended.
Listen, no old jokes and nothing about him taking the pterodactyl to school. That's his business.
and don't let JSV in your bathroom if possible.
Oh, yeah, the upper deck.
What that could mean too.
Right.
All right. So let's kind of graduate a little bit to another topic in terms of. All right. So I was talking to somebody. Actually, I don't want to say who. Somebody who's an ex-mobster, and he had a little bit of a respite, like from like a few months ago to now, right? And he's like, "What the hell happened?" And I was kind of trying to explain, right? You had Francis, you had Sammy, you had, whether you like him or not, you had A-Light with Gene Borello, and then like that was it, right? And then you kind of had, I think Calandra kind of came along. I think the NBA Button Man came along. And then I think Lee Cole did his like first interview with Calandra, and that put him on the map. Then he kind of threw in FBS, and then you had a whole bunch of other people that followed suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, where did like? But now it's like a shit show. Where did like MobTube stop being MobTube, and where did it go wrong? Vinny, I want your opinion.
I think it went wrong when you had guys that were in the life starting channels and guys that weren't in the life talking about it.
Yeah.
I think because you had a lot of guys that said, "How dare you?" It's almost like being a Freemason or being in the army, where like you don't lie about that stuff.
Yeah.
And they felt like, hey, you have no right to talk about our life. You're reading in Wikipedia or listening to stories, and half of them are probably not true. And I think that's the problem with Mob 2 more than anything, that there's a natural like Neapolitan, like a Neapolitan or Neapolitan system.
I'm hearing an echo.
There's a little bit of
A rift.
subtle, and I think that's what it is. There's automatically a rift with those guys, and I think it'll always be there, even if it's subtle.
Well, I had a show before with somebody in the life, and now with the armchair. I very rarely would do a show like a monologue with just myself. I have no firsthand experience, and if I do, it's an analysis, or I have a guest on or an expert on. Right? I think that's a safe space for me. But I think there's some guys out there that are like, again, there's X people in life, and then there's content creators. I think things go wrong when the content creators kind of act like they're in the life. You know what I mean, Jason? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, and more so with Vinny. Like, there was guys who had nothing to do with it. It's not like being a football commentator. Like, you don't have to play in the NFL to be a football commentator. Right. You watch it. Maybe you played it in high school. Right, it's a little different. If you want to commentate on the mob and you want to talk about that life, you have these guys coming out because of whoever they knew, and they're talking about it. It kind of ruined it, watered it down for the guys who actually lived that life. So that's what ruined it, I think.
Okay, so now let's get to like real mob stuff without naming names, and we don't need to get into specifics of anybody current. Joe, is a mob dead in New York?
Well, are you going to let me answer that question, or we're just going to skip over? Because
if we have all four of us answer the same question.
Okay, hold on, because what I'm going to say on it is very important. Okay, you know where Mob 2 went wrong?
When armchair
it went wrong when these people that are creating content have no respect. Okay, because you could create mob content and not be a street guy. If you show people, you could do it respectfully and tactfully, but these people have no respect. So you're getting on here and you start disrespecting this guy and that guy, because who's going to come on Mob 2 and talk about it? John Gotti? No. You're going to get turncoats, and you're going to get people that read books.
No.
What else are you drawing from? But there's no respect. And
can we just take a moment? You have a fitted hat that has half a mesh. That's insane.
It's a snapback fitted, it's called.
That's insane. I've yet to see and it's meshed. Mm-hmm. That's insane.
And Tom's talking about wasting time. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
I know enough that hat is a little hard to find, and it's not covering a mohawk. Okay. So hold on, guys. Just a little bit of fairness, and does it cause some administrative housekeeping? We gotta kind of I'll ask you guys can leave too. Trust me, it's a lot easier for me. But we might jump around with the questions, and you did a good job. If you got a question and you're not going to answer around, you want to answer, go ahead. So, Joe, I'm going to go back to you. The mob in New York, in your opinion, is it still alive?
Yes.
Okay. Can you share as much as you're willing to share?
Well, the reason why I say yes is because, basically maybe their earning potential is down.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe the numbers have dwindled a little.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be people out there looking to get over on the system. Yeah. It's just human nature, I guess, and they're still around. They might not be as powerful. They might be, like you might think of them as a street gang or on that level, but they're still here. I mean, I live on Staten Island. Everywhere I go, I see guys, you could, and they have that certain look, it's like 3 PM. You know what I mean? They got the jewelry on and everything. And, don't look like they'd be working at, I worked in retail, so I know what retail people look like, or it doesn't look like he's a computer guy, or, they just look like they're, driving around in a nice car about to go hit the gym.
Well, the reason why I bring this up is because when I did my previous show, I did a little bit of research on the Lucchese family just to kind of see where they were at, what was going on, the name, so I didn't look like an idiot when the show went live. And again, it's Wikipedia, but fairly reliable source. I looked at about 70 different guys that were on Wikipedia. I didn't want to do anything that wasn't public, but publicly there's 70 people. 50 of these guys out in 14, out in 15, out in 16, out in 17, out in 19, COVID release. There's a lot more guys on the street now than I think ever since like 1998. My estimation, I think there's probably 1,000 made guys running around.
Yeah, and it makes sense because the big prosecutions were in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Those guys got 20, 30 years, and now they're all coming home. Not everyone got life. So
Vinny, can it regroup, you think?
Yeah, but I don't think it'll ever be as strong as it was. To me, it reminds. I think it's going to be a much smarter gangster now because they're into tech and they're into stocks and Bitcoin, all this stuff. So I think it'll weed it out, and I think it's going to take a while to see. I don't think it'll ever be like the heyday. There's too much now electronic surveillance, FBI. They have all departments just looking for one guy. I don't think honestly a lot of these new guys are smart enough.
What about, and I'm going to
wait, can I just add one thing? And that's what makes the whole Canadian thing crazy to me, because it seems like they're stronger than ever at this point. And how, like, really, when have we heard about Canada in this way? You know what I mean? It's like, it seems like they're...
Joe, just one quick thing. Does Canada look that much stronger now because America's weak?
No, Canada's strong.
Even though, so if America was equally as strong as the 80s,
I'll give you an example. Example, right?
I was just curious.
So they killed Catroni 30 years ago, who happened to be Calabrian, right? Mm-hmm. And the Sicilian faction.
Violi. They killed Violi. Yeah, exactly.
Violi. What did I say? Crowley?
You said Catroni, but he's another guy too.
They killed Catroni, I think. Or Violi took over.
Paolo Violi was the Calabrian who got killed by Nick Rizzuto and those guys.
That's right. And
his son.
And Violi worked for Catroni. That is correct.
Exactly right.
And JSV eats Ronzoni. Okay, now, so with that said, they killed him a long time ago, and the Calabrians kind of regrouped, Hamilton, I think, Bridge, or that area. And then they came back years later. They sniped the old man on in his house, which is never done. They killed his son, Vito Assad, I think on his birthday. They kidnapped his brother-in-law, I believe.
Yeah,
and they multiple people. And to this day, the other day they killed. I really think, in my opinion, like the Italians don't fuck around. They will wait years and pick you off one by one by one. And the Calabrians are strong because they're backed by 'Ndrangheta, which is in Calabria, and understanding Antonio Nicasso that like the 'Ndrangheta or the mob in Canada is so big, it almost has its own cell. Like it's so big, they almost operate autonomously from Italy, as well as a local gangster that are Canadian born. I think there's a lot of killings, and I see this in the Italian American culture. Italian Americans and Italian Canadians are a lot closer to their heritage than Italy. If you go to Montreal, there's a lot of Italian-speaking people that are first generation. You go to New York, not so much. I think the same thing translates to the mob. There's still old school guys that are from there or born first generation that has those values that we don't care about cameras. We don't care about video. We don't care about rats. We're going to fucking kill you. And they kill Musitano in his driveway, which is fucking insane.
Tom, if they universally, where a made member in Canada or Italy was recognized here, do you think it would change things to be more strong? Where if everyone was recognized, if you're in the mob, you're made here. If you come from Sicily, because right now they're not. Do you think that would help the mob for
what I think helped the mob was keeping it how it is.
Really,
you still have to get made locally, and there's two examples of that. Number one is the Sicilian faction of the Gambinos. They're running the show. You got Lorenzo Menino, Cefalù, a few other guys. Ernie Grillo, though Americanized, is considered now a boss of both worlds, and you don't hear him in the papers. You don't the names, but like they're so strong. The Bananas, I understand, not only regrouped, but I hear they're as much as 200 strong, and they have straight ties to Sicily. The Sicilian mob still exists. The Calabrian Dragata still exists. The Camorra still exists, and they're stronger than ever. I think, in my opinion, that the Bananas, aside from the Genovese are always going to be the Cadillac, if you will, the Ivy League. But I think the Italians kind of took over, and I'd be surprised if they're not slowly bleeding guys over 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 or 5 by 5 and filling the ranks. Because let's be honest, we're 4 Italian American men here that we wouldn't maybe be the best gangsters per se, but I could be an earner. We could all be earners and be associates. But we're not in the life, right? So you don't have a strong talent pool from Italian American men. So I think they're going to take from abroad. What do you guys
When
think?
do you think the Genovese became the Ivy League? Under what regime?
They always have. They always have. You know why?
Okay.
This is what I talk about the armchair NBA at the time. Business, right? This is business. The leadership. They had like 4 CEOs since Luciano. You had Luciano, you had Genovese, you had not only like CEOs, but the Lee Iacocas of the mob, right? You had Genovese, you had Costello. I'm sorry. Luciano. Who was next? Costello, Genovese, Lombardi, and then Chin. So 4 or 5 over 100-year span. You look at the Gambinos outside after Colo Gambino, they probably have 6. So you have strong leadership and culture within your team, right? Culture within your Borgata, you know? So it's like that's kind of why they're strong. The Genovese is strong. That's Jason. They're strong in Jersey, and you don't even know who half these guys are, you know?
Yep. Another thing I think we overlook about the Italian mob is I think they're losing market share to like other ethnic groups too.
100%.
That are chipping away at it. That's making them look a little less powerful because now they're not involved in, let's say, the wholesale drug trafficking in the city now. You know, it's gone to other groups.
Yeah.
And that changes the game too. 30 years ago, there wasn't all these different. 40 years ago, there was like, you know, not all.
Last time I was in the city, I was at a Cigar Inn on the east side. Of course, having a cigar. And I was there, and I was just chatting with somebody. Asked Jason, when I'm in cigar bars, I talk to anybody. You guys all probably know that. So chatting it up, got the guy to open up. He was an undercover cop for the NYPD, but he triages with the DEA. So he was giving me a whole bunch of shit. It's
good undercover. He opened up to you.
Well, he's
not undercover anymore.
I couldn't get his name. I couldn't take a picture, but like he opened up and he gave me like story.
Don't tell nobody I'm undercover.
Bullshitting, but for the most part, it seemed fairly reasonable. I'm not, dumb, but I'm not stupid, right? So it kind of seemed reasonable in some of his stories. And I asked him point blank. I said, I got a podcast. I kind of like follow the mob genre. Any Italians pop up? He's like, not really. He said the Italians been at a kind of the distro game for a very long time, according to him. But I don't know. A lot of Dominicans, Puerto Rican.
Yeah. I have a friend who works for one of those 3-letter agencies. And Tom, I told you about it. I asked about Italian mob action. He goes, nope. He goes, we're doing bikers. We're doing, terror organization cells, terrorist organization cells, and like, the cartel. But as far as Mafia, he had nothing to say.
Joe, is it because they're so brutal? The other groups that are involved now, it makes the mob looks watered down because you have a lot of those groups that are brutal. They will just go right after you, where it's not like that much in the mob anymore. So do you think that also makes them look stronger because they just will go right after you?
That's a very good question. You know what I mean? And it could be true, but I think a lot of it might have to do with, where were the Italians? Let's say if the Italians were controlling the drug trade, they were getting it from Afghanistan or Colombia or Mexico. Well, you know what they did? They said, F that.
Yeah.
We're going to send our people there.
Correct.
And I think that has played into it as well. Like the Mexican cartels, they have people just like Ndrangheta comes here. They have all these people, and why not deal with their own people? So
right. Yeah. And it's interesting because, again, I think we talked about this in another podcast, but if you're new to this, I have a personal aversion to drugs. Of course, I drink too much once in a while, but a personal aversion. And, I don't want anybody, especially tiny Americans, involved with drugs, right? Or anybody for that matter. But from a business standpoint, I kind of feel like the mob, if they want to stay relevant, might have to get involved, like the Sicilian collaborating counterparts, at the wholesale level, the importation level, maybe resurrect some of the cities that still have some guys knocking around. Otherwise, I don't see them lasting because they're not going to make the money and have the power that they had,
But the question is, why do they have to be the biggest organization? Why can't they just be like on a lower scale and make their money and, drive the Oldsmobile type thing?
Well, no, they are
living that way.
They are, but look, for example, right? Like you're in the mob, right? And you control Bay 8th and you were a captain and you had a lot of connections. Now you're in like Freehold, New Jersey, and you have a butcher shop and you're, a made guy. Maybe you're making some side hustle, but you're not making the money you made, versus your Sicilian counterparts are sitting down with Colombians or sitting down with people in Amsterdam and they're making like tens of millions. If you're going to do it for the money, I hate to say this, but a RICO is a football number. It's the same thing with a drug sentence. Might as well make a fuck ton of money doing it, no?
Yeah, but another thing is, you brought up a good point earlier. I mean, because we really don't deal with active members and stuff like that, but you probably, if you really looked into it, you probably got to ask yourself, like you were saying, there is a lot of names that got out of jail. Well, what are they doing? You know what I mean? Like there's some big names, if you really, like you were saying, Lucchese family.
Yeah.
All the top names from 20 years ago, they're all out now. So did they just stop doing things, or?
Yeah.
I mean, and these are like captains or higher. It's not like just a regular, and then you look at the Gambino family, you don't even know who's running it. There's names we would never even know how to pronounce that are involved now.
Are we in for internal wars now? Because guys come back in the street, they want to assume their position.
I don't think so. I'll tell you why. One, it hasn't happened. But number two, it's kind of like the Pax Mafia. It's a peaceful time. Like I actually, like what I gathered from the old show where Joe was kind of alluding to, there's guys that are out there that are made, they have a crew. Maybe they make 200K, 400K. They're not making 5 million, but they make a few bucks. They're, they operate freely. They don't really get their hands dirty. They're not going to get into a fight. They have it. They probably got some associates to handle it. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of happy being like what they are, which is okay. It's just that it's a shadow of its former self,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jason's got to go soon, but my question to Jason is Italian Americans assimilated quite well in this country. And I think hopefully S4 could be considered an example of that, right? So why did the mob assimilate as well in American society and prosper like Italian Americans have? Jay, what's your opinion?
Why didn't the mob assimilate?
Why didn't it? I mean, think about it, right? Like the Italian Americans.
We were just talking about the Genovese who assimilated, who they have their guys going to work. I think there's a perfect example of how maybe one family did, guys going to 9 to 5s and still being a part of the organization and claiming a W-2.
Yeah, but
if you notice,
go ahead. Sorry,
but as our culture, really changed from when our ancestors were coming here in the late 1800s to early 1900s, where we were treated very poorly and we had nothing. Our ancestors had nothing, and they went to the streets, the crime, organized crime and all that. But now look at it. I mean, what 99% of us, are doing, on the other end of that coin, we're living the straight life.
That's my point. Why didn't they say, you know what, my son is going to be a doctor, maybe he can get involved with running clinics, and my other son could be a lawyer and could defend? Like, why didn't they take that assimilation and operate more like a Freemasonry versus as a glorified street gang? That's
I think it always goes back to the fast money. I really do. I really think it goes back to, I can make 10 grand next week as opposed to 10 grand in 60 days, $5,000 a month. I think that's what it really was. And then once you show that fast money to a younger generation, then the younger generation wants the fast money,
right?
And the cycle continues.
They don't look at the long game; they look at right now.
Correct.
Right.
And they're not taught the long game.
Yeah,
Right.
and Vinny, if you don't mind me asking, because respectfully, you're the closest to the street. Guys that you dealt with, were they more gangsters or were they more racketeers?
The guys that I dealt with hand in hand were more racketeers. Once in a while, if there was a problem, I had to deal with a gangster, and that's a ranked guy. But for the most part, no, the guys I'm dealing with gambling. No, I'm not dealing with gangsters, really. Racketeers, guys that are earning money, really.
You're a good boy.
Because it's not breaking legs gambling. It's all on paper. And then most of the time, gamblers will pay if you work out a deal with them. Only once in a blue moon, when someone tried to take a shot and they brought down someone and said, pretty much you knew they took a shot at you because they had someone to bring down. That's when I might have to deal with someone. But other than that, no. Racketeers.
What about – so watch. So this is where I think from the business perspective, they goofed big time, right? You had prohibition, came legal. They ran the show before. They helped run the show after. Why weren't they ahead of legalization of gambling, meaning the drug operation or whatever they were involved with, the bigger players that own supermarkets that have big money? Why don't they put their money behind the legalization of sports gambling? Maybe own a tech company, maybe own an app company, maybe own a media company, because they had the money and they had the resources.
They did. Well, Tom, they did the gambling. They started Las Vegas and they got kicked out.
Correct. But then why
they started Cuba. They started Florida.
Yeah. Tom,
Agreed.
if Michael Frances was around 15 years later,
yeah,
he would have had the biggest probably gambling operation in Costa Rica. I believe that.
Well,
I think he missed it by 10 or 15
the mob
years.
invented online gambling. The mob,
But not everyone had the acumen to do it. Because back then the mobsters were more gangsters. I think now they act a little more. They want to be sophisticated. You don't have all that leg breaking anymore. Back then you had the guy in every neighborhood that had the reputation of busting someone's head. Go try to find them now. You don't have a lot of them anymore. So
I think the mob tried, but they just couldn't stop doing what they were doing. They had to kill this guy and kill this guy and do whatever and get the drugs involved. They had Las Vegas, but of course the money wasn't enough. They had to skim. Remember casino? Right. They had to skim. They had to mess with the unions, right?
Yeah, but that's what I don't get.
That's
Why
true.
don't you supply the little circular toilet filters for the bathroom? Why don't you supply the paper towels? Why don't you supply the linens? That skim where you made great money lasted for 5, 8, 10 years. Or I'm having Gary Jenkins on, so I want to see what kind of run they had. Or they could have supplied everything, and their great grandchildren would have ate. We're gonna be wrapping up soon.
They did a lot of that, though. They did a lot of that.
They did
too.
But they got rooted out by the corporations, right?
Most definitely, yeah. But I have a question for Jason. Have you noticed a change in your business, like people that are coming to you for money, or has it always been the same? Is it like more people from different countries?
It's amazing how it starts off illegal, right? And then it becomes legal when somebody finds out a little something in the law that they can tweak a little, some verbiage, right, at the bottom of the screen, right? And that's where the lending industry is. So the high interest rates was on the streets. Now the high interest rates with the lenders. Like wait a minute, let's figure out a way. These loan sharks are charging 30-40%. Wait a minute, can we do this legal? Hey, they're running crap games and sports gambling on the streets. Wait, can we make money off of that? And the politicians make it legal so the corporations can make money, right? Same thing with the pot. Same thing with, a number of things. And in my industry, yes. So we have high interest rate loans, which you would think that, hey, this was years ago, 20 years ago, you go to a guy on the street to get this loan. Nope. Now it's legal. The lawyers worked it out.
Mm-hmm.
The states worked it out. Who's getting a piece of what? Who's getting a tax dollar from what? And so, yeah, I've seen it in my industry. Yep. The mortgage industry, right? Yep.
Yeah.
And it's legal.
Yeah. So, Vinny, we're gonna have you wrap up this first episode
Okay.
of the Four Horsemen. So, what do you want to see out of the Four Horsemen? Where do you want to see this go? And do you promise not to do a show every day on this channel?
I promise. I think that I'd like it to be a channel where at least once any subscriber, because it's easy to press a subscriber button and never watch the show.
Yeah.
I hope that we can give someone at one time, they'll remember something that we did and say, it helped me during the day. That's what I want.
I like that. And obviously, don't get me wrong, our lady viewers are always welcome, but this
Absolutely.
will probably focus a lot on, male topics and men topics. Jason and Baith, anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I want to say I hope that the Four Horsemen could show people that, guys like us that might have a little different background or whatever, we could come on the show, give our opinions, argue with each other, yell at each other, and then by the end of the show say, "Hey, bro, I love you, man." You know what I mean?
We have nothing against Jason and his sexual proclivity. It's all, it's all open.
Right.
Well, what would be the odds two
the
Jersey
Mohawk,
guys and two Brooklyn guys get so close, right?
Good point. Good point.
So I think, I think it's going to be really good because, we're the same, but we're different in a lot of ways. So we all have a different view. And now we got to take the Mohawk into consideration. And that throws another monkey wrench into it because that's
let it get off paper and everything.
I thought he was on parole because he was staying.
It wasn't that funny, Tom. I mean,
the 18th he goes into court.
Okay, Jay, wrap this one up. It's a shorter one, guys, than normal. We're testing out the first episode. We're going to share the F out of it. Please subscribe.
Yes.
Subscribe and share for anybody that's, watches Vinny, anybody that watches Armchair, anybody that is into Mohawks, and anybody that you see Baith bopping around to say, hey, you know what? I watched the Four Horsemen. We want to hit this hard and fast, and this is the first time we did it dedicated on the show.
And the like button, right? That thumbs up button.
Oh, smash that like button. So, Jason, wrap it up.
Guys, thanks for joining us. Many more episodes to come. Interesting topics from all of us. Everyone have a good night.